If you follow Dutch politics in any way, you'll probably know that voting patterns can often shift dramatically in relatively short periods of time. Parties, both new and old, enjoy flash-in-the-pan polling surges, but can just as quickly collapse. With just 3 months until the Netherlands snap election, the polling looks as dramatic as ever, with Geert Wilders' PVV losing voters to a rising populist right alternative, and the previously moribund Christian Democrats surging to return as a major political force. So in this video, we're going to explain the state of the race, and why it may well be the Christian Democrats, not the PVV, that play the crucial role in forming the next Dutch government. Never miss an episode, and always feel in the loop by subscribing and ringing the bell. The election on October the 29th is a snap one, so it's worth starting with a reminder of why it's actually happening. The last election in November 2023 resulted in a victory for Geert Wilders' far-right Party for Freedom, or PVV, which enjoyed a last-minute surge to become the largest party for the first time ever. After months of negotiations, a 4-party coalition eventually formed in July 2024, led by previously little-known civil servant Dick Schoof. The largest party was Wilders' PVV, joined by the centre-right People's Party for Freedom and Democracy, VVD, which had fallen to third after 4 consecutive election wins under Mark Rutte, New Social Contract, or NSC, a brand new centre-right party that briefly led the polls but ended up in 4th, and the Farmer Citizen Movement, or BBB, a conservative agrarian party that had spiked in popularity but ultimately came 6th. The coalition, the most right-wing in the country's recent history, had its divisions from the outset, and it ultimately collapsed in early June 2025, having been in office under a year, after Wilders pulled the PVV out in response to the other party's refusal to move ahead with his strict migration proposals. So, what is the state of the race? We're going to use the latest Ipsos polling, which shows something of a 4-way battle at the top. The PVV remains in first place, with polling putting it on 27 out of 150 seats. That's a considerable drop from the 37 it won in 2023, and well below the nearly 50 seats it was at in the polls in early 2024. In joint second place on 24 seats is the left-wing Green Left Labour Alliance and the centre-right Christian Democratic Appeal, or CDA. For Green Left Labour, this would be 1 seat fewer than they won at the last election, though a larger drop from recent stronger polling. However, for the CDA, which has been steadily growing in the polls, 24 seats would be a massive gain on the 5 they won in 2023, and would be a remarkable comeback for the party that previously dominated Dutch politics for decades until 2010. And falling behind the CDA in the Ipsos poll is the VVD on 20 seats, which would be a drop of 4 seats compared to 2023, and a decline from 3rd to 4th. So, those are the main 4 parties. But of the many other smaller parties, we think there are another 4 worth mentioning. The first is Democrat 66, or D66, a social liberal party polling at 12 seats, up 3 from 2023. The next is JA21, a populist right-wing party founded in 2020 and which won a single seat in 2023, that has now jumped up in the polls to become one of the largest small parties with 7 seats. The final 2 parties to mention are both members of the outgoing government, BBB, falling from 7 to 4 seats, and NSC, which is on the verge of total wipeout, polling at just a single seat, having won 20 at the last election. So, what's been behind these dramatic changes? Well, the PVV's lead has been shrinking basically since the government formed. And this is because voters simply aren't happy with the PVV-led government's performance. Disapproval in the Schoof cabinet sharply increased through its brief time in office. Infighting comes up as a major problem in polling, and by April 2025, the public was more pessimistic about the government's chances of succeeding in virtually all areas, including building more homes, reducing immigration, and protecting traditional values. According to the latest Ipsos poll, some 11% of 2023 PVV voters would now vote for JA21. It's anti-immigration, Eurosceptic, climate skeptic, and so on. But its leader, Joost Eerdmans, is more popular than Geert Wilders. And a high-profile defection from the PVV to JA21 has driven the smaller party's polling jump. Ipsos writes that PVV voters switching to JA21 often believe that JA21 is pursuing a more realistic course and therefore has a better chance of joining the cabinet. But as we've established, the biggest winner in the polls since the last election has been the CDA. A significant amount of the CDA's good fortune can be attributed to its leader, Henry Bontebal, who is by some margin the most popular party leader in the country, and is seen as the most suitable candidate to be Prime Minister. Ipsos suggests that voters view Bontebal as clear, honest and calm, and perhaps he benefits from being a somewhat fresher-faced politician with moderate vibes. But it's worth remembering that the party hasn't actually unveiled its election programme yet, so it remains to be seen exactly how it will pitch itself to the electorate. The CDA's continued polling surge has come mainly at the expense of the NSC and VVD, with 26% of prospective CDA voters having voted for NSC in 2023, and 19% having voted for the VVD. The NSC terminal decline since the last election has not been helped by the fact that its founder, Peter Omtzigt, around whom the party was basically entirely built, announced earlier this year that he was retiring from national politics because of its toll on his personal health. As for the VVD, it, or more specifically its leader Dilan Yeşilgöz, has been struggling in recent months as it slides in the polls. VVD voter confidence in Yeşilgöz sharply declined last month, nearing a 50-50 split between those who trust her as leader and those who don't. She received both internal and external criticism last month for the firestorm she created when she accused singer Dowry Bob of Jew hatred. According to Ipsos, the VVD is mainly losing voters to the more centrist CDA, as they're dissatisfied with Yeşilgöz's right-wing populist course. So, what might the next Dutch government look like? Well, it looks unlikely that the PVV will return to government, as the major parties have ruled out working with Wilders. As polling currently stands, that means the most viable coalition would be a centrist one, featuring Green Left Labour, the CDA, VVD, and probably D66. Supporters of these parties are broadly positive or neutral about them working together. However, VVD and Green Left Labour supporters would rather not see them govern with each other, which could be a hurdle. But another option, an alternative right-of-centre coalition without Green Left Labour or the PVV, would struggle to build a majority. But remember, there are still 3 months to go, and history shows that a lot can change in that time. Ultimately, a lot will depend on whether the CDA can maintain its positive trajectory, or if it's peaked too soon. If it's the former, the party will be sure to play a key role in forming the next government. Everything we've discussed in today's video plays into a broader sense of uncertainty in the world at the moment. And who's so often in the middle of all that? Well, the United States. So in the next issue of our magazine Too Long, we're discussing this geopolitical shift, and whether we're currently observing the end of the American order. In that section, we discuss everything from the collapse of democratic norms in the US to the decline in American soft power, to issues with the US economy or the battle for universities, before discussing who could potentially take over in a post-America world. So if you want to find out what we really think, now's your chance. It's not just the US though. This issue is our longest ever at 78 pages, full of our very best journalism and analysis. So we also get into why Germany's military might is growing, if Farage could become the UK's Prime Minister, why countries are outsourcing their migrants, why the global order is collapsing with Professor James Kerr-Lindsay, and why leaders like Putin and Netanyahu seem to be getting away with it. The magazine has now been officially published, so if you order a copy today, we'll ship it to you as soon as we can. Or if you select the digital edition, we'll send a digital version of Too Long straight to your inbox. Plus, if you want the best deal, make sure that you subscribe to Too Long. That way, not only do you get every issue going forward, you'll also get 20% off every copy as long as you're a member. On top of that, this week only, if you use code LASTCHANCE20, you'll get an additional 20% off this copy, bringing down the cost from £9.99 to £6.40 for a digital edition, or £13.99 to £8.96 for a physical edition. This really is your last chance too. From next week, all new subscribers won't receive this issue of Too Long, instead having to wait until December's The New Middle East issue. So if you want the reduced subscriber pricing on this issue, this really is your last chance. As we outlined in our recent video on TLDR's finances, TLDR actually made a loss last year, and Too Long is a big part of our plan to make TLDR profitable in 2025 to continue funding the free videos we release every day. So if you want to be part of that, then head to toolong.news and subscribe today. We really appreciate your support.